The darkness is heavy here, a physical weight pressing down on your eyelids. There is no ambient glow from streetlights filtering through the window, no blinking LEDs from a charging phone, and certainly no digital clock casting a red hue across the room. It is absolute, suffocating pitch black. The air in the room is stale, smelling faintly of dried herbs, old rushes, and the distinct, earthy scent of unwashed bodies sleeping nearby. You are awake before the birds, before the sun, and certainly before the master of the house even considers rolling over in his feather bed. Let's be honest, if you were actually dropped into the year 1550 right now, the sheer thermal shock of this uninsulated room would probably end you before breakfast, to say nothing of the looming threat of smallpox. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and let me know in the comments where you're re-watching from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing the map fill up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background now, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie still for a moment on your pallet. It's not a bed in the way you know beds. It's essentially a sack of heavy canvas stuffed with straw, tossed into the corner of the kitchen or a drafty hallway. The straw has broken down over months of use, creating lumps that dig into your ribs. But right now, the heat radiating from your own body, trapped under the coarse wool blanket, is the only comfort you have. The air outside the covers is aggressive. It's the kind of damp, English cold that seeks out the marrow of your bones. But you can't stay here. You are the engine that makes this household run, and engines need to start cold. You throw back the rough blanket. The cold hits you like a physical slap, raising gooseflesh instantly on your arms. You are already wearing your base layer. In the Tudor era, you don't really have pajamas. You sleep in your shift or smock, a simple, knee-length linen garment that serves as your underwear, your nightgown, and the barrier between your skin and the coarser wool of your outer clothes. It is the most important piece of clothing you own, because it is the only thing that gets washed regularly. It absorbs your sweat and body oils, protecting the expensive wools you wear over it. You sit up, your breath pluming in white clouds before your face in the darkness. You fumble on the floor for your stockings. These aren't the sheer, elastic nylon things of the future. These are thick, knitted wool, or perhaps cut from woven cloth if you're particularly unlucky and poor. You pull them up your legs, the wool scratching slightly against your dry skin. There is no elastic to hold them up, so you have to tie them in place with garter strips of ribbon or fabric just above or below the knee. It's a delicate balance. Tie them too loose, and your socks will be around your ankles by mid-morning. Tie them too tight, and you'll lose circulation in your feet. Gravity is the enemy of Tudor hosiery, and it is a battle you fight every single day. Next comes the petticoat. You stand up, shivering, your bare feet finding the rush-covered floor. The rush's dried reeds scattered over the earth or stone are cold and slightly damp. You step into the petticoat, a simple skirt usually made of flannel or red wool. Red is a popular color, not just for style, but because it's believed to be warming and medicinal. You tie the waistband with a drawstring. It adds a layer of insulation around your hips, trapping that precious body heat. Now for the kirtle. This is the main event of your wardrobe. It's a combined bodice and skirt, sleeveless, usually made of a sturdy wool in a dull russet or sheep gray color. It's heavy. When you lift it, it feels like a weighted blanket. You slip it over your head, and the bodice settles around your torso. This is where the structural engineering comes in. You don't wear a bra. The kirtle is the support. The bodice is stiffened, perhaps with layers of canvas or heavy linen glue pasted together, a material known as buckram. You begin the tedious process of lacing it up. Depending on the style, this could be front lacing or side lacing. Since you're dressing yourself in the dark, you pray it's front lacing. You pull the laces tight. The stiff fabric hugs your torso, creating that conical, straight-backed silhouette that defines the era. It's not tight-lacing like a Victorian corset. You need to be able to breathe and bend and scrub floors, but it's firm. It holds you in. It's essentially a hug you can't escape from. Historians still argue whether working-class women in this specific decade were beginning to wear separate bodies or stays, the precursors to corsets, under their kirtles, or if the stiffened kirtle itself was the only support. For you, in the pre-dawn dark, the distinction is academic. All you know is that you are now encased in a shell of wool. You reach for your sleeves. Yes, sleeves are a separate item. You don't wash your wool kirtle often, so having detachable sleeves means you can swap them out if you dip your elbow in a bowl of pottage. You pin them onto the shoulders of your kirtle with straight pins. That's right, pins. Buttons are expensive and labor-intensive to make. Hooks and eyes are fiddly. A simple brass pin is the duct tape of the 16th century. You are literally held together by sharp metal spikes. Hopefully, you don't stick yourself. Finally, you attend to your head. You pick up your coif, a close-fitting white linen cap. You smooth your hair back washing. It is a rarity, so it's likely greasy, but the linen cap hides a multitude of sins. You tie the coif under your chin. It keeps your hair out of the fire and out of the food, and more importantly, it makes you look respectable. A woman with her hair loose is a woman undone. You pin a heavier veil or a darker hood over the coif if you plan to go outside, but for now, the white linen framing your face is enough. You slide your feet into your shoes. They are leather, flat, and broad-toed, looking a bit like a duck's bill. Here's a fun fact. There is no left or right shoe. They are made on straight lasts. You have to break them into the shape of your feet over months of agony. If you put them on the wrong feet this morning, it doesn't matter. They fit equally poorly on both sides. You are now fully dressed. You are wearing perhaps 10 to 15 pounds of clothing. The layers of linen and wool create a microclimate around your body, trapping the heat. The shivering starts to subside, replaced by the itch of wool and the stiffness of the bodice. You are a tank, armored against the cold and the grime. You take a deep breath, inhaling the stale air, and step away from your pallet. The house is silent, heavy with sleep, but your day has already begun. You shuffle across the cold flagstones. Your stiff leather shoes, remember, those duck-billed ones that fit both feet equally badly clacking softly in the silence. The kitchen is the heart of the Tudor home, but right now, the heart has stopped beating. It is a cavern of shadows. The only light comes from the faint gray suggestion of dawn beginning to bleed through the small, high window, which is likely covered in oiled cloth or horn rather than glass. Glass is for rich people who don't mind throwing money at sand. You have to make do with translucent animal parts that let in a gloomy, jaundiced light and keep absolutely none of the cold out. You approach the hearth. It is massive, a gaping brick mouth that dominates the entire wall. In a few hours, this will be a roaring inferno, capable of roasting meats and boiling water. But right now, it is a pile of gray, sullen ash. You kneel down, the heavy wool of your kirtle bunching around your knees. The floor is colder here, closer to the stone. You can see your breath, a rhythmic puff of white that vanishes into the chimney breast. Your first job is to check the curfew. The word comes from the French couvre-feu, meaning cover fire. Every night, you are supposed to bank the fire covering the glowing embers with a layer of ash to keep them smoldering but safe while the household sleeps. If you did your job perfectly last night, you should be able to rake back the ash and find a few glowing, angry red eyes of charcoal staring back at you. You grab the iron poker, the metal freezing against your palm, and gently disturb the gray mound. Nothing, just dead, black dust. Great, the fire is out. You probably smothered it too well. Or maybe a draft came down the chimney and killed it. Either way, you now have to start a fire from scratch, in the dark. with frozen fingers. If this were a survival show, there would be dramatic music. Here, there is just a heavy sigh and the knowledge that breakfast is going to be late if you don't hurry. You reach for the tinderbox on the mantel. It's a small round tin or wooden box that contains the holy trinity of Tudor combustion: flint, steel, and tinder. You open it up. Inside sits a piece of flint, a sharp-edged lump of silica that looks like it belongs in a riverbed, and the steel. The steel isn't a rod. It is usually a piece of high-carbon iron shaped, a bit like a knuckle duster or a letter C, that fits over your fingers. And then there is the tinder. You might expect dried grass or paper, but paper is far too valuable to burn. Instead, you are likely using something called charcloth, linen rags that have been baked in a fire without oxygen until they are black and incredibly flammable. Or, if the household is thrifty, and they are, you might be using Fomus fomentarius, also known as horse's hoof fungus. It's a woody, parasitic mushroom that grows on trees. When processed, it creates a velvety, suede-like material called amadou that catches a spark beautifully. It's a quirky little biological hack, using a dead mushroom to create the element of fire. You position the tinder in the box. You hold the flint in your left hand, bracing it, and the steel in your right. You strike, clack, nothing happens. Just the sound of metal hitting rock. You strike again, clack. A tiny, pathetic yellow spark jumps off the steel and dies instantly in the cold air before it even hits the tinder. This is the reality of pre-industrial friction. You aren't creating fire. You are physically shaving microscopic pieces of white-hot steel off the tool with the sharp edge of the flint. It requires force, precision, and a lot of patience. It's the original swiping right on Tinder, except the rejection rate is higher, and your hands get dirtier. Clack, clack, spark. Finally, a spark lands on the charred linen. It doesn't burst into flame. That's a Hollywood lie. Instead, a tiny, glowing red ring appears on the black cloth. It looks like the end of a lit cigar. This is the critical moment. The baby fire is alive, but it's on life support. You lean in, your face inches from the ash. You have to feed it oxygen. You purse your lips and blow gently, steadily. A long, thin stream of air. The red ring expands. It glows brighter, shifting from dull red to angry orange. You can smell the acrid scent of the scorched linen, a smell that will linger in your nose for the rest of the day. You reach for your spills, thin splinters of wood or dried stalks of hemp tipped with sulfur, and touch them to the glowing tinder. Sulfur is the bridge. It catches easily, flaring up with a blue flame and a smell that reminds you of rotten eggs and hell itself. But you don't mind the stench because it means you have actual fire. You transfer this flame to the kindling you've arranged in the great dry gorse, twigs, maybe some pine cones. The flames lick up the wood. The crackle is the most beautiful sound you've heard all morning. Light floods the hearth, casting long dancing shadows across the kitchen floor. You sit back on your heels, wiping your soot-stained hands on your apron. You have created heat. You are a wizard, but with fire comes the enemy, smoke. As the wood catches, thick gray smoke billows up. Most of it goes up the chimney, but a fair amount rolls out into the room, stinging your eyes and catching in your throat. Historians still argue whether the average Tudor chimney was actually efficient enough to clear a room, or if most servants lived in a perpetual, low-level haze of carbon monoxide and wood smoke. Given that your eyes are already watering and you're coughing into your sleeve, you're inclined to believe the perpetual haze theory. You are essentially slow curing yourself like a side of bacon. It's no wonder everyone in this era looks a bit squinty. You feed larger logs onto the fire now. Oak is best for a long, hot burn, but you take whatever the woodcutter has brought in. You have to build it up big enough to boil water. You grab the heavy iron cauldron that hangs from the trammel hook. An adjustable ratchet system inside the chimney that lets you raise and lower pots over the flames. You wrestle the pot, filled with water from the night before, over the growing fire. The heat begins to radiate outward, fighting back the damp chill of the room. You stand up, your knees cracking audibly. The front of your body is now roasting while your back, facing the drafty room, is still freezing. This is the rotisserie effect of Tudor life. You are never warm all over, just unevenly cooked. The fire is roaring now. The smoke is settling into a layer near the ceiling. The kitchen is waking up. You take a moment to rub your hands together, enjoying the friction and the warmth. You've conquered the thermodynamics of the morning, but there is no time to bask in your victory. The water needs to boil. The master will be awake soon, and that bucket by the door isn't going to fill itself. The fire was just the prologue. The real work is about to begin. With the fire crackling a fragile, hungry infant of a flame that you can quite trust, yet you turn your back on the only source of warmth in the world. It feels like a betrayal, leaving that golden glow for the damp shadows of the scullery. But the kitchen isn't going to run on charcoal alone. It needs the universal solvent. It needs water. And unlike your modern faucet, which delivers endless gallons of treated, temperature-controlled hydration with the flick of a wrist, your water supply is currently sitting at the bottom of a hole in the ground 3 streets away. You pick up the yoke. It's a curved piece of wood, carved to fit over your shoulders and cut out around the back of your neck. It looks deceptively simple, like a rustic piece of farmhouse decor you'd buy at an overpriced home goods store. In reality, it is a device of torture. You settle it across your shoulders, the wood pressing down onto your wool kirtle. From the hooks at either end of the yoke, you hang 2 massive wooden buckets. These aren't lightweight plastic pails. They are made of oak staves bound with iron hoops, heavy enough on their own, let alone when filled with liquid. Cooperage, the art of making barrels and buckets, is a serious technology here. And these buckets are built to survive an apocalypse, which is unfortunate because it means you have to carry their indestructible weight. You kick open the heavy back door and step out into the courtyard. The air outside is different from the stale chill of the kitchen. It's raw, smelling of wet earth, wood smoke from early risers, and the unmistakable pungent tang of a city that doesn't have a sewage system. You trudge out of the gate and onto the street. It's still dark, that gray, liminal time where shapes are indistinct. The streets of a Tudor town are not paved with gold. They are paved with mud, gravel, and muck. Muck is a polite umbrella term for a mixture of animal dung, rotting vegetable matter, straw, and whatever the neighbors threw out their windows last night. You have to walk carefully. Your duck-billed shoes offer 0 traction. If you slip here, you aren't just getting bruised. You're getting infected. The town is sleeping, but it's a restless sleep. You pass a stray pig rooting around in a pile of refuse near a neighbor's doorstep. In many towns, pigs are the unofficial sanitation department, roaming free to eat the garbage. It's a quirky symbiotic relationship. The city gets cleaner streets, marginally, and the pig gets a free buffet. You give the pig a wide berth. These aren't the cute pink piglets of cartoons. These are bristly, semi-feral urban scavengers that will absolutely bite your ankle if they think you re-competition for a turnip peel. The silence is broken only by the creak-squeak of your yoke and the rhythmic swinging of the empty buckets. You're re-heading for the neighborhood well, or perhaps a conduit, a public fountain, fed by lead pipes, bringing spring water from outside the city walls. Conduits are fancier, but the well is reliable. You reach the well in the square. It's a stone circle topped with a wooden roof to keep the bird droppings out mostly. There's no line yet, which is the only blessing of waking up this early. Later in the day, this spot will be the water cooler of the 16th century, the absolute epicenter of gossip, arguments, and social posturing. Right now, it's just you and the damp wind. You hook your bucket onto the well chain and release the winch. The bucket plummets into the blackness. Splash! You engage the handle and start to wind it back up. This is the moment you regret every choice that led you to this life. Water is heavy. A gallon weighs over 8 pounds. You are hauling up maybe 3 or 4 gallons per bucket. You are doing a bicep curl with 30 pounds of dead weight, using a rusty iron handle that screams with every rotation. You bring the dripping bucket to the lip of the well and unhook it, and repeat the process for the second one. Now comes the real challenge, the return trip. You hook the full buckets onto your yoke. As you stand up straight, the weight settles onto your spine, compressing your vertebrae in a way that guarantees you'll be an inch shorter by the time you reach 40. You have to walk with a specific gliding gait to keep the water from sloshing over the sides. If you spill it, you just have to come back, and that is not an option. Inertia is your enemy here. Once those heavy buckets start swinging, they want to keep swinging, pulling you off balance. You are a gyroscope of misery. As you navigate the street back to the house, you have to be vigilant. This is the era of the garde-loup, a corruption of the French garde-l'eau. Watch out for the water. People empty their chamber pots out of second-story windows. By law, they are supposed to do this only at certain times and shout a warning, but relying on the courtesy of a half-asleep neighbor with a full bladder is a risky gamble. You keep one eye on the muddy path and one eye on the overhanging jetties of the timber-framed houses above, ready to sprint or as much as one can sprint while carrying 60 pounds of water at the first sign of an opening shutter. Now you might be wondering, why are you working this hard for water? Doesn't everyone just drink beer? It's a common trope that Tudor people never drank water because it was deadly poison. You make it back to the courtyard without falling into the muck or getting christened by a chamber pot. Your shoulders are burning, red marks digging into your skin under the wool of your dress. You kick the kitchen door open again. The warmth of the fire hits you, and for a second, it feels wonderful until the smoke catches in your lungs. You heave the buckets off the yoke, pouring the water into the large iron cauldron you hung over the fire earlier. The water hisses as it hits the hot metal sides. You aren't done, of course. One trip is never enough. The laundry needs water. The scullery needs water. The master's hand-washing basin needs water. You turn around, pick up the empty buckets, and head back out into the gray morning. You are a human pipeline, a biological pump moving liquid from point A to point B, fueled only by a lack of sleep and the fear of being yelled at. The city is starting to wake up around you now. A rooster crows, a cart rattles in the distance, and the first light of the sun catches the puddles in the street, making the mud look deceptively shiny, almost like bronze. But you know better. It's just mud, and you have to walk through it again. You set the buckets down near the hearth with a heavy thud that splashes a little water onto your shoes. Your shoulders are throbbing, singing a dull, rhythmic song of complaint, but you don't have time to listen to them. You turn your gaze downward to the floor. If the kitchen is the heart of the house, the floor is its memory. It remembers everything that has happened here for the last week or month, depending on how strict the master is about hygiene. And right now, the floor is telling a story you'd rather delete. You are standing on rushes. In a modern context, you might picture a nice, woven seagrass rug from a high-end catalog. That exists in the wealthy parlors, woven into mats, but here in the working guts of the house, we are talking about loose rushes-dried reeds, straw, or sedge scattered directly over the beaten earth or stone flags. It's a primitive carpet, a layer of organic insulation meant to keep the cold from radiating up through your feet. But it is also a trap. You grab the broom from the corner. It's a besom, a bundle of birch twigs tied to a hazel handle. It looks exactly like a witch's transportation device in a storybook. It is stiff, scratchy, and not particularly aerodynamic, but it's great for moving heavy debris. You start to sweep. This is not the mindless, smooth gliding of a Swiffer. This is excavation. As you drag the birch twigs across the stone, you are disturbing a micro-ecosystem. The top layer of rushes is dry and brittle, snapping under the broom. But underneath, things get complicated. There is a famous description by the Dutch philosopher Desiderius Erasmus, who visited England around this time. He was, to put it mildly, horrified by English floors. He wrote that the bottom layer of rushes is often left undisturbed for 20 years, harboring, and I'm paraphrasing here, to keep things relaxed, spittle, ale droppings, scraps of fish, and other abominations not fit to be mentioned. Now, historians still argue whether Erasmus was being a factual reporter or just a fastidious germaphobe who liked to complain about his hosts. Was the 20-year floor a widespread reality, or the Tudor equivalent of a bad Yelp review for a specific dirty inn? Judging by what you are uncovering near the prep table, Erasmus might have had a point. As you scrape the old rushes toward the door, you find the ghosts of dinners past. A mutton bone from Tuesday, a crust of rye bread that has petrified into a rock, a grease spot where the dripping pan overflowed. You are sweeping up the household's compost. The smell is a mixture of stale beer, damp straw, and something vaguely yeasty. It's the scent of human habitation condensed into a 2-inch layer of mulch. You shovel the old, soiled rushes into a basket to be taken out to the midden heap later. The stone floor underneath looks naked and cold, stripped of its blanket. It's damp, dark, and uneven. You take a moment to scrape up the stickier patches of grime with a flat piece of iron or a stiff knife. You are essentially exfoliating the house. Now comes the rewarding part. You go to the bundle of fresh green rushes you brought in from the storehouse yesterday. These were cut from the riverbank or the marsh. They are still pliable, smelling of clean water and green chlorophyll. You scatter them across the stones. The sound is a soft swish-swish, a gentle rustling that is infinitely more pleasing than the scratch of the broom. The green stems bounce slightly as they hit the floor. It's like spreading hay for a horse, but you're the horse. But plain rushes aren't enough. You need to mask the underlying scent of old house. You reach into your apron pocket or a hanging bag for the strewing herbs. This is the Tudor air freshener. You have a mix of dried plants that release their scent when crushed underfoot. You sprinkle meadowsweet first. It's the queen of strewing herbs, a favorite of Queen Elizabeth herself. It has a sweet, almond-like scent that cuts through the mustiness. As you toss the dried, creamy white flowers across the green rushes, they settle like snow. Then comes the lavender, sharp and floral, and maybe some hyssop or marjoram. This practice is practical, not just aesthetic. Many of these herbs are chosen for their insect-repelling properties. You are fighting a war against fleas, lice, and moths. Tansy and wormwood are particularly good for this, though they smell a bit medicinal, like a bitter tonic. You scatter a handful of wormwood near the dog's sleeping corner, because, let's face it, the dog is ground zero for the flea population. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some households use sweet flag, Acorus calamus, a reed that smells like citrus or cinnamon when you step on it. It was so prized for floor covering that it was often sold for a high price in city markets. If the master has sprung for sweet flag, you know he's trying to impress someone coming to dinner. Today, however, you're working with local meadow grasses. Budget cuts, you know. As you finish strewing the herbs, you walk over the fresh layer to pack it down. The sensation is spongy and soft. A faint cloud of lavender and almond scent rises up as your heavy shoes crush the dried leaves. For a brief moment, the kitchen smells like a summer garden instead of a smokehouse. It's a deception, of course. The grease and the damp are still there, just hidden under a cosmetic layer of greenery, but it's a deception that makes life bearable. You stand back and look at your handiwork. The floor is a vibrant, chaotic mix of green stalks and dried flowers. It looks inviting. It looks clean by 16th century standards. You know that in about 3 hours, it will be covered in soot, onion skins, and muddy footprints. But for this fleeting window of time, you have imposed order on chaos. You lean the besom back in its corner. A stray flea hops onto your wrist, a survivor of the Great Purge. You crack it expertly between your thumbnails without even looking. It's just muscle memory at this point. The room is now prepared. The fire is roaring. Hopefully, the water is ready and the floor smells like a meadow. The stage is set, but the silence of the morning is breaking. You can hear footsteps on the stairs above. The household is stirring. The quiet, solitary part of your morning is over. Now begins the performance, the part where you have to interact with other humans who are hungry, grumpy, and expecting their ale. You wipe your hands on your apron, smoothing the heavy wool over your hips. You take a deep breath, inhaling the meadowsweet one last time before the smell of frying bacon takes over. You need to get the bread. You need to tap the cask. You need to be invisible and essential all at once. The ceiling boards above you creak, a rhythmic groaning that signals the descent of the gods, or in this case, the master of the house. The quiet window of your morning is officially shattered. It is time to break the fast. Now, when you hear breakfast, your modern brain probably conjures images of sizzling bacon, scrambled eggs, maybe an avocado toast if you're feeling fancy, and a steaming mug of coffee. Erase that image immediately. Coffee is a distant rumor from the Ottoman Empire that went to arrive in England for another century. Tea is a weed growing in China that no one here has heard of. And a heavy cooked meal this early? That is considered somewhat gluttonous, a moral failing. You head to the buttery. This isn't where butter is kept. That's the dairy. The buttery is for the butts or barrels of ale and wine. It's a cool, dark room that smells intensely of yeast and damp wood. This is the gas station of the Tudor home. You approach the cask of small beer. You grab a leather jack or a pewter tankard. You turn the wooden spigot. The liquid that pours out is cloudy, brownish, and room temperature. There is no refrigeration, so you drink your beer at whatever temperature the cellar is. This small beer is brewed to be weak in alcohol, usually around 1% or 2% ABV. It's not meant to get you drunk. It's meant to keep you alive. It's liquid bread. It provides calories, hydration, and a mild antiseptic effect against the questionable water supply. Historians still argue about the social stigma of breakfast in this period. Was it a recognized necessary meal for everyone? Or was it viewed as a weakness permitted only to laborers, children, and the elderly? Some moralists of the time claimed that eating before the midday dinner was a sign of a weak constitution or a lack of self-discipline. But let's be real. Your master is a merchant with a temper, not a monk. He wants his ale, and he wants it now. Whether it's a moral failing or not, you are going to serve it to him. You carry the tankard into the hall or the parlor, depending on how grand the house is. Let's assume he's eating in the parlor for warmth. You set the tankard down on the table. Next comes the bread. You return to the pantry from the French pane, bread, and select a loaf. Bread is not just food. It is a class marker. If the master is doing well, he eats manchet, a fine white wheaten loaf made from flour that has been bolted, sifted through fine cloth to remove the bran. It's soft, airy, and expensive. If times are lean, he might be eating sheet bread, which is a bit coarser, or raveled bread. You, on the other hand, will eventually be eating maslin, a mix of rye, and wheat, or carter's bread, which is heavy, dark, and full of enough bran to keep your digestion moving at the speed of light. But right now, you are handling the good stuff. You place the loaf on the table. You don't just plonk it down. You might slice it for him, or if he prefers, he will tear it himself. There is a specific etiquette to cutting bread. You slice the upper crust, get it? And offer it to the most important person. It's the best part, the most baked, the least likely to be doughy. The master enters. He is wearing his doublet, but he looks disheveled. Mornings in the 16th century are rough for everyone. He grunts a universal language for feed me, and sits heavily on the bench. You place the bread and ale before him. Maybe there's a bit of cold beef or cheese left over from supper, but usually it's just the basics. He takes a knife from his belt. Forks are for Italians and people with affectations. Here we use knives and fingers. He stabs a piece of bread and dips it into the ale. This is called a sop. It softens the crust and soaks up the liquid. It's the soggy, boozy ancestor of toast and jam. You stand back, hands clasped in front of your apron, blending into the wainscoting. This is the hardest part of the morning. Your stomach is an empty cavern. You have been up for hours. You have hauled 30 pounds of water, scrubbed a floor, and inhaled smoke, and you haven't eaten a crumb. The smell of the fresh bread is aggressive. It taunts you. The yeasty tang of the ale makes your mouth water. You watch him chew. He eats with efficiency, wiping his mouth on the back of his hand or a napkin if he's feeling polite. He drinks deeply from the tankard, the Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. You track every swallow, calculating how much will be left. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. In some households, it was believed that toasted bread dipped in ale could cure a cold or settle a stomach, but if you added spices like nutmeg or ginger, it became a caudle, a warm restorative drink. But spices are expensive, imported from the mysterious East, so your master is likely sticking to plain ale unless he's feeling particularly sickly or rich today. He finishes the first tankard and signals for a refill. You rush to the buttery, your duck-billed shoes skidding slightly on the rushes careful. Don't slip on the meadowsweet. You refill the tankard. The foam rises to the top, thick and creamy. You have to fight the urge to take a sip. Just one sip. No, that's theft. And theft by a servant is not a slap on the wrist. It's a quick way to lose your job or get a beating. You return. He takes the refill, but waves you away. He is done with your presence, though not his meal. You retreat to the kitchen, the taste of phantom bread in your mouth. You won't eat until the family has finished their midday dinner, or perhaps you'll snatch a piece of the coarse rye bread while you work, hiding in the pantry like a criminal. The concept of hangry has not been linguistically defined yet, but you are the living embodiment of it. Your blood sugar is rock bottom. Your energy is running on adrenaline and fear. But there is no time to pity your empty stomach. The day is marching on. The sun is fully up now, or as up as it gets in a gray English sky. The master has been fueled. The engine of the patriarchy has been primed with grain and alcohol. Now, the real chemical warfare begins. The linens are waiting, and they are dirty. You look at your hands red from the cold, calloused from the broom. They are about to get much, much worse. You leave the smell of warm bread behind and prepare yourself for the smell of lye and old grease. The great wash is calling, and it does not care that you are starving. If you thought hauling water was the physical peak of your day, I have some terrible news for you. That was just the warm-up. That was the cardio. Now we move on to the chemical warfare portion of the morning. It is time for the great wash. In the modern world, doing laundry is a passive activity. You throw a pod into a white cube, press a button, and walk away to scroll through Instagram for an hour. Here, you are the machine. You are the agitator, the spin cycle, and the heater. And the detergent you're using isn't a fresh-scented blue gel. It is a caustic, homemade nightmare that would require a hazmat suit in the 21st century. You head to the wash house, or the designated corner of the courtyard, where the buck tub stands. This is a massive wooden barrel, often waist-high, with a spigot at the bottom. The buck is the Tudor term for the wash, specifically the process of soaking clothes in lye. This isn't a weekly chore. Because it is such a colossal production, households often save up their linen sheets, tablecloths, napkins, shifts, shirts for weeks or even months until they have enough to justify a great wash. Today is that day. The mountain of dirty linen is waiting for you, stiff with sweat, grease, and the general grime of life. First, you have to make the soap. Well, not soap bars. That's for fancy people. You are making lye water. You take the wood ash collected from the fireplace. Remember that ash you raked this morning? And pack it into a cloth bag or layer it at the bottom of the tub. Then, you pour water through it. As the water percolates through the gray dust, it leaches out potassium carbonate, potash. The resulting liquid is lye. It is highly alkaline. If you touch it with your bare tongue, it will burn. If you get it in your eye, you will have a very bad time. But wait, there's a secret ingredient. If the linens are particularly stained or need whitening, you might use chamber lye. This is exactly what you think it is. It is stale urine. Yes, the chamber pots you dodged in the street earlier are actually a valuable resource. Urine contains urea, which breaks down into ammonia over time. Ammonia is a fantastic bleaching agent and degreaser. So you are essentially washing the master as fine white ruffs and table linens in a mixture of tree corpses and fermented pee. It's the original organic cleaning solution. You begin to load the buck tub. You layer the dirty linens carefully. Heavy sheets at the bottom, finer shirts at the top. You have to be strategic. If you pack it too tight, the lye won't penetrate. If you pack it too loose, you're wasting chemicals. Once the tub is full, you cover the top with a bucking cloth, a heavy canvas sheet, and pile more wood ash on top of that. Now comes the bucket brigade. You take the water you heated over the fire. Hopefully, you've kept that cauldron full, and you begin to pour it over the ash. The hot water dissolves the salts in the ash, creating a caustic solution that trickles down through the layers of linen. It eats away the grease, the proteins, and the stains. It drips out the spigot at the bottom, where you catch it in another bucket, reheat it, and pour it back over the top. You do this for hours. It is a cycle of heat and chemistry. The smell is distinctive. It's a sharp, metallic tang mixed with the acrid scent of wet ash and the biting fume of ammonia. It clears your sinuses instantly and probably kills a few brain cells. Historians still argue about the exact frequency and universality of using urine in the average household wash. Was it a standard practice for every wash day, or a specific treatment reserved for stubborn stains and bleaching whites? Some argue that the stale urine method was more common in industrial fulling mills than the domestic kitchen, but given the obsession with white linen as a status symbol, it's highly likely you're acquainted with the chamber pot method. After all, nothing says nobility like a shirt bleached by the waste of the peasantry. After the bucking comes the scrubbing. The lye has loosened the dirt, but it hasn't removed it. You haul the wet, heavy linens out of the tub. Wet linen is incredibly heavy. A single wet sheet can weigh 10 to 15 pounds. You drag them to a washing board or a flat stone. You don't have rubber gloves. You have your hands. You plunge them into the soapy, lye-filled water and grab a batlet or a beetle, a heavy wooden paddle. You beat the cloth. Thwack, thwack, thwack. You are literally beating the dirt out of the fabric. Then you scrub. You rub the fabric against itself or the board. The lye is slippery. That slipperiness is actually a chemical reaction called saponification. The alkali is reacting with the natural oils in your skin and turning you into soap. Your hands turn red. Then they turn raw. The skin around your fingernails starts to crack and bleed. This is the hallmark of your profession. Washerwoman's hands. They are swollen, chapped, and painful. Every time you dip them back into the lye, it stings like 1,000 paper cuts dipped in lemon juice. But you can't stop. The master's shirt must be spotless. Here's a quirky tidbit. To combat the smell of the wash and the ingredients used, washerwomen would often put sweet-smelling herbs like lavender or rosemary into the final rinse water. This is the great-great-grandmother of your spring meadow fabric softener. It was a desperate attempt to mask the fact that the clothes had spent the last 4 hours soaking in caustic sludge. You work your way through the pile. Your back screams in protest as you bend over the tub. The steam rises around you, curling your hair and making your clothes damp with condensation. You are sweating, but the water in the rinse tub is freezing cold. You are a thermometer fluctuating between fever and hypothermia. And let's not forget the small wares, the stockings, the caps, the handkerchiefs. These are fiddly and require more delicate handling, meaning more time with your fingers submerged in the biting water. You scrub the collars of the master's shirts, where the sweat and grime accumulate. You scrub the hem of the mistress's kirtle, where it dragged through the mud. You are intimately acquainted with the dirt of the entire household. There are no secrets from the washerwoman. You know who is sick, who is messy, and who spills their wine. By the time the scrubbing is done, you are surrounded by piles of wet, cleanish fabric. But you aren't finished. You can't just throw them in a dryer. You have to wring them out. Have you ever tried to wring out a soaking wet queen-sized linen sheet by yourself? It requires the grip strength of a rock climber and the leverage of a wrestler. You twist the fabric, water pouring out onto the stones. Your wrists ache. The raw skin on your hands protests with every twist. If you're lucky, you have another maid to help you, one on each end, twisting in opposite directions like a human centrifuge. If you are alone, you hook one end over a post and twist until your arms tremble. You pile the wrung-out laundry into a basket. It's heavy. You hoist it onto your hip or your head. You head for the drying green or the hedgerows. You will spread the white linens over the bush, creating a white hedge, where the sun, if it ever shows up, and the wind will dry them and bleach them further. As you walk away from the wash house, your hands are throbbing. They look like boiled lobsters. You wipe them on your apron, but the dryness of the wool just catches on your rough skin. You've successfully performed a chemical miracle, turning filth into purity, but the cost is etched into your dermis. And as you look at the drying linen, fluttering like surrender flags in the breeze, you realize the sun is now high. It's barely noon. You have survived the great wash, but the day is only half over. The kitchen is calling again. The iron pots are waiting. And unlike the linen, they don't need to be bleached. They need to be scoured. Your hands are already throbbing. The skin is tight, red, and angry from the lie bath of the great wash, feeling a bit like you've been wearing gloves made of stinging nettles. But there is no lotion waiting for you. No soothing aloe vera gel to pump onto your palms. Instead, you have to transition immediately from chemical warfare to physical erosion. You are leaving the wash house and heading back into the scullery, where the heavy artillery of the kitchen is waiting. It is time to scour the iron. In a modern kitchen, you might let a pan soak in hot soapy water, deluding yourself that the burnt-on cheese will magically lift off while you watch TV. Here, soaking is a luxury you don't have time for, and soap is too precious to waste on metal. You are going to clean these pans with the 3 elements of Tudor dishwashing: acid, grit, and pain. You stand before the scullery bench. Piled high are the casualties of the morning's prep and yesterday's meals. There are iron skillets, brass cauldrons, and the heavy iron spits used for roasting meat. They are coated in a layer of grease. But this isn't the liquid grease you pour out of a bacon pan. This is cold Tudor grease. It has congealed into a hard, white, waxy substance that clings to the metal like a second skin. It smells of old animal fat and carbon. You pick up a heavy iron skillet. It weighs about as much as a newborn baby. You grab a handful of your cleaning agent. It's not a yellow sponge with a smiley face. It is river sand. Yes, just sand. Sharp, silicate, granular sand. You throw a handful into the greasy pan. To cut the fat, you splash in some vinegar. It hits your raw, lye-cracked hands, and the sting is so sharp it almost makes your vision blur for a second. You bite your lip, inhaling sharply through your nose. The pain is a wake-up call, a reminder that you are alive, even if you wish you weren't right now. You grab a rag, usually a piece of an old, retired linen shirt. Bunch it up and begin to scrub. Scritch, scratch, scritch. The sound is like nails on a chalkboard, but lower and grittier. You are grinding the sand into the iron, using friction to scrape away the layers of burnt food and congealed fat. You have to lean your whole body weight into it. Your shoulders, already aching from the water buckets, protest loudly. You are a human sandblaster, but you have a secret weapon. If the sand isn't enough, you reach for a bundle of dried green stems sitting on the shelf. This is Equisetum hyemale, commonly known as scouring rush or horsetail. It looks like a prehistoric bamboo shoot. It has a quirky little plant that absorbs silica from the soil and deposits it in its cell walls. Essentially, this plant is made of natural glass sandpaper. When you rub it against the metal, it bites. It cuts through the grease and polishes the iron underneath. It is nature's Brillo pad, free for the harvesting from the nearest riverbank. You scrub in circles. The vinegar turns brown and murky as it mixes with the grease and rust. The smell is pungent, a sour, metallic mix that coats the back of your throat. You are working on a massive brass pot now, the one used for boiling pottage. Brass needs to shine. In the Tudor mind, a bright pot is a clean pot. This brings us to an interesting point of contention. Historians still argue whether Tudor servants aggressively scoured their iron cookware down to the bare metal every time, or if they allowed a layer of seasoning, polymerized oil, to build up, much like modern cast iron enthusiasts do. On one hand, manuals of the time scream about brightness and cleanliness, equating shine with godliness. On the other hand, anyone who has ever cooked on bare, unseasoned iron knows everything sticks to it. So, are you stripping this pan naked, or are you just removing the chunky bits? Given the master's obsession with appearances, you're probably scrubbing until you can see your own tired reflection in the brass. Culinary physics be damned. You work your way through the pile. The spit is the worst. It's long, unwieldy, and coated in the most stubborn, caramelized meat juices. You have to prop it up and scrub it inch by inch. Your fingernails scrape against the metal, turning black with soot and grease. The sand gets everywhere, under your nails, into the cracks of your dry skin, maybe even in your hair, if you brushed a stray lock away with a dirty hand. And let's not forget the garnish. This is the set of pewter plates and platters that the family eats off of. Pewter is soft. If you scrub it too hard with sand, you'll scratch it. If you don't scrub it hard enough, it looks dull and leaden. You have to find the sweet spot, polishing it with a softer cloth and perhaps a finer abrasive, like wood ash paste. You rub until the dull gray metal gleams like silver. It's a deception, a way for the master to look rich without actually buying silver plate. You are the special effects artist, making the props look expensive. As you finish the last pot, rinsing it with a splash of that precious water you hauled earlier, you take a moment to assess the damage. Your hands are now gray, stained with a mixture of carbon, oxidized metal, and fat. They are stiff. The vinegar has found every microscopic cut, but the pots look good. They are stacked, gleaming dully in the low light of the scullery. There is a profound, if temporary, satisfaction in this. You have reset the kitchen. You have erased the evidence of the last meal. Of course, in about 2 hours, the cook is going to blast these clean pans with high heat and fill them with sticky sauces, undoing all your work in seconds. But that is a problem for future you. You wipe your hands on a dirty rag, trying to get the worst of the grit off. You can feel the sand grinding between your fingers. It's a sensation that will stay with you all day. You'll find sand in your bed tonight. You'll find sand in your shoes. You are slowly becoming part mineral. You step back into the main kitchen. The heat from the fire is picking up. The smells are changing. The morning scent of stale smoke and lye is being replaced by something more complex: onions, herbs, roasting meat. The scullery work is done. but the ingredients for the main meal are still just raw potential. They need to be fetched. You realize you have to go back outside. The market is waiting. And if you thought the scullery was dirty, wait until you navigate the crowd at the shambles. You adjust your coif, retie your apron over your stiff kirtle, and prepare to haggle. You have conquered the chemistry of the wash and the physics of the scour. Now you must conquer the economics of lunch. You step out of the heavy front door, basket hooked over your arm, and are instantly assaulted by the full, unfiltered volume of the 16th century. If the kitchen was a sensory deprivation tank of smoke and silence earlier this morning, the midday market is a riot. It is loud, it is aggressive, and it smells like a wet dog wrapped in a dirty gym sock that has been left in the sun. You are heading to the Market Cross, or the Cheapside, the main shopping thoroughfare. In a modern city, you might complain about traffic noise or the hum of the subway. Here, the noise pollution is organic. It's the rattle of iron-rimmed cartwheels on cobblestones, if you're lucky, or rutted mud, if you're not. It's the bleating of sheep being driven to slaughter, the frantic clucking of chickens in cages, and the shouting of vendors. Every shopkeeper is a carnival barker, screaming their wares at the top of their lungs. Hot peascods, oysters, fresh oysters. What do you lack? You keep your elbows out. This is a contact sport. You weave through the crowd, dodging a group of apprentices playing football in the street, a game that is less. Organized sports and more gang warfare with a leather bladder. You step gingerly around a pile of horse manure, thankful once again for your thick woolen skirts, even if they are heavy. Your destination is the shambles. This is the butcher's quarter, and it is not for the faint of stomach. The name comes from the flesh shambles, the shelves or counters where meat is displayed. In the modern world, meat is a sanitized, plastic-wrapped pink square that bears no resemblance to an animal. Here, the animal is very much present. You walk past skinned carcasses hanging on hooks, dripping blood into the gutters running down the center of the street. Flies are everywhere, a buzzing, iridescent cloud that you have to wave away from your face constantly. You stop at a stall to look for a joint of beef for the master's dinner. You don't look at a price tag because there aren't any. You look at the meat. You poke it. Yes, you physically touch the raw meat with your bare hands, the same hands that were just scrubbing floors and scouring pots. Everyone does. It's the only way to check for freshness. You press a thumb into the flesh. If it springs back, it's fresh. If the indentation stays, or if it feels slimy, you walk away. There is no FDA here. There is only the assize of bread and ale, and various guild regulations, which are enforced by market inspectors who roam around looking for cheaters. If a butcher is caught selling rotten meat, he might be put in the pillory with the offending carcass burnt under his nose, a vivid, smelly public shaming that acts as the era's one-star Yelp review. Historians still argue about the level of autonomy a servant like you would actually have in the market. Did the mistress of the house trust you with the coin purse to negotiate prices on your own, or did she accompany you to ensure you were unskimming a few pennies off the top for yourself? Given that you recurrently eyeing a particularly nice ribbon at a peddlery stall that you absolutely cannot afford, let's assume the mistress is back at home, trusting you perhaps foolishly with the household budget. You decide on a piece of mutton. Now the dance begins. You ask the price. The butcher gives you a number that is frankly insulting. You laugh a dry, cynical sound. You offer half. He looks offended, clutching his chest as if you physically wounded him. He counters. You inspect the meat again, pointing out a suspiciously gray patch. You haggle back and forth. This isn't rudeness. It's a social contract. If you accepted the first price, he'd think you were an idiot. Finally, you settle on a price. You hand over the coin's heavy silver groats, or maybe some clipped pennies, and shove the meat into your basket, right next to the leeks. Next, you head to the fishmonger. If it's a Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, it's a fish day by law. The Crown wants to support the Navy and the fishing fleet, so you are legally required to abstain from red meat. You stare into the dead, glassy eyes of a stockfish, a dried, salted cod that is as hard as a cricket bat. It will need to be soaked for hours and pounded with a hammer before it is even remotely edible. Here's a quirky tidbit. If your master is feeling adventurous and wealthy, you might be looking for a lamprey. These are eel-like, jawless fish with a sucker mouth full of concentric rows of teeth. They look like parasitic aliens. King Henry I famously died from eating a surfeit of lampreys, but for some reason, people still love them. They are sold alive, wriggling in buckets. You decide to stick to the salted herring. It's safer, and it doesn't look like it wants to eat you. You move on to the costermonger for vegetables. You need onions, garlic, and pot herbs. You might grab some carrots, but they aren't the bright orange Bugs Bunny carrots of the future. They are purple, white, or yellow, and usually skinny and woody. You handle them, knocking off the dirt. As you navigate back through the throng, you are walking through a minefield of muck. We talked about the muck earlier, but in the midday heat, it has evolved. It is a slurry of mud, animal waste, vegetable trimmings, and the contents of those chamber pots. The hem of your kirtle is getting splashed. You lift your skirts slightly, just enough to clear the worst of it, but not enough to show your ankles, because that would be scandalous. You are navigating a biohazard zone with nothing but wool and leather to protect you. You pass a quack doctor selling a miracle cure for the plague, standing on a crate and shouting about the virtues of unicorn horn powder, which is definitely just ground up bone. You pass a ballad seller singing a raunchy song about a miller and a milkmaid. The city is vibrant, dirty, dangerous, and alive. Suddenly, a bell rings out. It's the market bell, signaling the close of trade, or perhaps a shift in who is allowed to buy. Often, locals get first dibs before noon, and foreigners, people from the next town over, can only buy the leftovers afterwards. You check the position of the sun. You've been gone too long. The cook will be screaming. You clutch your basket tighter, feeling the weight of the mutton and the stone-hard fish. You put your head down and charge through the crowd, using your shoulder to check a slow-moving monk out of your way. You are a woman on a mission. You have the protein. You have the carbs. You have survived economic combat of the market. Now you just have to get it all back to the kitchen before the master realizes lunch is late. You drop your heavy basket on the kitchen table, the mutton landing with a wet, fleshy slap that makes the cook jump. There is no time for congratulations on your successful haggling or a break to rub your aching shoulders. The sun is at its zenith, or close enough to it. It is 11 o'clock in the morning, which means it is time for dinner. In the modern world, you likely eat a sad sandwich at your desk at noon and save the big meal for the evening. In the Tudor era, this is backwards. Dinner is the main event. It is the fuel injection that powers the rest of the day. And because this is a formal household, dinner is not just about calories. It is a theatrical performance of status, and you are one of the stagehands. You rush to the Uri, the area designated for linens and hand-washing equipment. You grab the tablecloth. This isn't a polyester blend you can wipe clean. It is heavy, white damask linen, likely imported from Flanders if the master is doing well. It is prized, expensive, and terrifically hard to wash, as your raw hands can testify, so treating it with respect is mandatory. You enter the great hall or the parlor. The board has been set up. This is literally a board-a-trestle table that is assembled for meals and dismantled afterwards to make room for other activities. Hence the terms room and board, or chairman of the board. You unfurl the cloth. You have to do this with a specific flourish, ensuring it hangs evenly without wrinkles. Now comes the most important object in the house, the salt. You place the salt cellar in the center of the table. This is a massive, ornate metal vessel, often silver or pewter, sometimes shaped like a tower or an animal. It holds the salt, yes, but it is primarily a GPS system for social standing. The master and his honored guests sit above the salt, at the head of the table. Everyone else, children, lesser guests, and upper servants, sits below the salt. Where you sit determines what you eat, how much you drink, and whether anyone bothers to speak to you. The family enters. They don't just flop down. There is a ritual of hand-washing. You or another servant approach with a pitcher, ewer, of water, a basin, and a towel. They hold out their hands. You pour the water. They wash. This looks like hygiene, but it's mostly ceremonial. It proves to everyone present that they are clean enough to touch the communal food, and they will be touching the food. There are no forks. The fork is currently a suspicious Italian novelty that is mocked as effeminate and unnecessary. God gave you fingers. Why use a tiny metal pitchfork? You use a knife to cut the meat and your thumb, and 2 fingers to pick it up. If you are polite, you only use your right hand, keeping your left hand clean for navigating the communal dishes. You begin to bring out the food. This is service à la francaise, meaning all the dishes for the first course are brought out at once and arranged on the table like a mosaic. You carry in the heavy platters. The roast mutton you bought, or perhaps one bought days ago that has been roasting all morning, goes directly in front of the master. He gets the honor of the meat. He will slice it and distribute it. Here is where the hierarchy hits you. The people above the salt get the prime cuts, the sizzling, fatty slices of roast meat. As the food travels down the table, the quality drops. The children or the tutor at the far end might get the boiled beef, the pottage, or the humble pie made from the umbles or innards of a deer. You, standing against the wall, get nothing, not yet. You watch the steam rise from the gravy, your stomach audibly growling in the quiet moments between conversation. The diners don't have individual ceramic plates. They have trenchers. These are square or round slabs of stale, coarse bread. The bread acts as an edible plate. You serve the meat onto the trencher. The juices soak into the bread, softening it. It's a brilliant, biodegradable system. As you circle the table with a jug of ale, refilling cups, you observe the mess system. A mess is a group of 2 to 4 people who share dishes. They dip their spoons into the same bowl of pottage. They tear bread from the same loaf. It requires a level of intimacy that would make a modern germaphobe hyperventilate. You have to trust that your messmate didn't wipe their nose on their sleeve before reaching for the peas. Historians still argue about the actual table manners of this period. We have courtesy books from the era that give us strict rules. Do and pick your teeth with your knife. Don't spit on the table. Don't throw bones on the floor. The fact that these books had to explicitly forbid these things suggests that people were absolutely doing them. However, in a respectable merchant's house like this, the floor is likely safe from flying debris. The dog might be disappointed, but the rushes stay relatively clean. Here is a quirky tidbit. There is a specific servant role called the sewer, from the old French asseoir, meaning to seat or place. A sewer was the waiter who arranged the dishes and tasted them for poison. While you probably aren't worried about someone poisoning the merchant's mutton, the ritual of the assay, the tasting might still be performed in a performative way if high-ranking guests are present. You, however, are not the sewer. You are just the pair of hands holding the heavy platter until your arms shake. The meal drags on. There are toasts. There is business talk. You are a statue. You are expected to be invisible, but instantly reactive. If a cup is empty, you fill it. If a napkin drops, you retrieve it. You are watching them eat the food you helped prepare, the food you hauled from the market, the food cooked over the wood you carried. Finally, the eating slows. The trenchers are sodden with grease and gravy. This brings us to the void. This is the clearing of the table. You bring a voider, a large basket or tray. You use a specialized tool, a curved knife or a wooden brush to sweep the crumbs and debris from the tablecloth into the voider. And what happens to the trenchers? The sodden, gravy-soaked bread plates? They are collected. In a wealthy house, they are given to the poor at the gate, a practice called alms. In a less wealthy house, or if the bread is particularly soaked, they go to the dogs. Or let's be honest, if you are starving enough and no one is looking, you might sneak a bite of a meat-soaked trencher before it hits the alms basket. It tastes like shame and mutton fat, but it fills the void in your stomach. You strip the tablecloth, folding it carefully to hide the stains. The table is dismantled or pushed back. The family moves to the fire or the garden. The performance is over. But your dinner is just beginning. You and the other servants retreat to the kitchen. You don't get a fresh roast. You get the leftovers. You eat the reversion, what comes back from the high table. If the master was hungry, you might be fighting over picked clean bones and the dregs of the pottage pot. You sit on a bench or stand near the prep table, eating quickly, using your fingers, wiping your mouth on your sleeve. It is a chaotic, noisy, unceremonious feed. You tear into the coarse brown bread, washing it down with the dregs of the ale. It is the best meal of your life, simply because you are finally sitting down. The grease coats your tongue, the ale dulls the ache in your back. You are fueling the machine for the second half of the day, because you aren't done. The sun has crossed the meridian. The light is shifting. The garden needs tending. The clothes you washed are drying and will need to be pressed. The sewing basket is overflowing. Dinner was just the intermission. The second act is about to start, and it involves dirt, weeds, and the endless battle against nature in the knot garden. You step out the back door, leaving the chaotic symphony of the kitchen behind. The heat of the cooking fire and the smell of roasting mutton fade instantly, replaced by the damp, earthen chill of the afternoon. The sky above is a flat, featureless sheet of slate gray. It looks like a bruised ceiling that is deciding whether or not to cry on you. This is the default setting of the English weather system. Not quite raining, but certainly not dry. It is a heavy air, one that clings to your skin and makes your wool clothes feel just a little bit tighter. You are heading into the garden. Now, when I say garden, don't picture a manicured lawn with a swing set or a pristine patio with a barbecue grill. This is not a leisure space. This is a factory. It is a pharmacy, a grocery store, and a perfumery all packed into a small, walled plot of land. You kneel down on a woven straw mat kneeler that protects your kirtle from the worst of the mud. It doesn't help your knees, though. You can feel the cold radiating up from the ground, seeping into the joints you've been abusing all day. You are in the knot garden. Ideally, this is a geometric marvel, a square arrangement of low hedges, usually boxwood, hyssop, or germander clipped into intricate, interlacing patterns that look like embroidery on the earth. The spaces between the hedges are filled with colored gravel, sand, or flowers. It is designed to be looked at from the upstairs windows, a display of man's control over nature. However, down here on your knees, it doesn't look like a pattern. It looks like a war zone. Historians still argue about how common these decorative knot gardens actually were in the households of the middling sort, like merchants or minor gentry. Was the knot garden a universal aspiration, or did most people just stick to rows of cabbages? Given the pretension of your master, remember, that silver-plated salt cellar? He likely insists on a knot garden to ape the nobility, even if it means you have to spend your afternoons fighting a losing battle against entropy. Your enemy today is the weed. Groundsel, chickweed, dandelion, nettle. They are relentless. They don't care about the master's geometric aesthetic. They just want to live. You reach in with your bare hands. Yes, dirty again. Moments after washing them for dinner, and grip a dandelion by the base. You have to pull slowly. If you snap the leaves off and leave the taproot, it will just grow back in 3 days, mocking you with a fresh yellow flower. You pull. The soil makes a wet, sucking sound. The root comes free, long and pale. One down, 3 million to go. But you aren't just weeding. You are tending the physic. This is the medicinal section of the garden. In the Tudor worldview, there is no Walgreens. If you have a headache, a stomach ache, or a suspiciously rattling cough, the cure is growing in the dirt right here. You check the sage, Salvia officinalis. It's the superstar of the Tudor pharmacopoeia. There is a medieval proverb. Why should a man die who has sage in his garden? It's believed to cure everything from memory loss to snake bites. You pinch off a few dead leaves. The scent is dusty and peppery, sticking to your fingers. Next to it is the rue, the herb of grace. It smells bitter and acrid. It's used to ward off plague and fleas, which, to be fair, are the two things you are most afraid of. You make sure the rue is thriving. If the rue dies, you might as well just lie down in a ditch and wait for the end. Then there are the pot herbs, parsley, thyme, winter savory. These aren't just for flavor. They are for balancing the humors. Tudor medicine is based on the ancient Greek theory that the body is filled with 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Illness is an imbalance of these. Eating a cold and moist salad needs a hot and dry herb dressing to prevent you from dying of a flux. You are essentially a bioengineer, tweaking the chemical inputs of the household to prevent everyone from dissolving into a puddle of melancholy or phlegm. Suddenly, you see it, the arch nemesis, a snail. It is clinging to the underside of a prize cabbage leaf, chewing a hole with slow, deliberate malice. You don't have pellets of metaldehyde poison. You have your fingers. You pick the snail off the leaf. It's cold and slimy, retracting its eye stalks in a futile attempt to hide. Now, what do you do with it? You could just throw it over the wall, but that's wasteful. Believe it or not, snails are an ingredient. Here is your quirky tidbit for the day. Snail water. Aqualemicum is a genuine medicinal remedy. You take a peck of garden snails, wash them in beer, of course, and then distill them with herbs to create a soothing syrup for coughs and consumption. Some recipes even suggest crushing them shell and all and applying them as a poultice. So you toss the snail into a bucket you brought along. He's not going to the compost. He's going to be cough syrup. You move down the row. The work is repetitive and hypnotic. Pull, shake, toss. Pull, shake, toss. The gray sky begins to lower. A fine mist starts to fall, that distinct English mizzle that soaks you through without looking like actual rain. It beads on your wool hood. It chills the back of your neck. You reach the lavender bushes. They are woody and need pruning. You snap off the dead heads. The scent explodes in the damp, air-clean, sharp, and floral. It cuts through the smell of wet earth and snail slime. For a second, you close your eyes and breathe it in. It smells like clean linen. It smells like the one thing this world rarely is: pure. But the garden is not just about plants. It's about signatures. You glance at the lungwort, with its spotted leaves that look like diseased lung tissue. This is the doctrine of signatures, the belief that God marked every plant with a visual clue as to what it cures. Lung-shaped leaf? Cures the lungs? Kidney-shaped bean? Good for the kidneys. It's a divine matching game. It makes you wonder what the dandelion is supposed to look like. A jagged lion's tooth? Strength? Or just a nuisance? Your back is screaming now. You have been stooped over for an hour. The damp is seeping through the kneeler. You stand up, unfolding your body like a rusty hinge. You wipe your hands on your apron, which is now a geological record of your day. Soot from the morning fire, grease from dinner, and now rich, dark loam from the garden. You look at the knot garden. It looks slightly better. The lines are a bit sharper. The weeds are retreating, at least for today. You have imposed order on the chaos of nature, just as you imposed order on the dirt of the floor and the grime of the laundry. It is a temporary victory. Nature always wins in the end. The weeds will be back tomorrow. The snails will return. The rain will never stop. But for now, the basket is full of weeds for the pigs and snails for the medicine chest. You grab a handful of fresh mint on your way out to chew on, a primitive toothbrush to freshen your breath after the onions of dinner. The light is failing. The gray sky is darkening to charcoal. The outdoor portion of your day is concluding. But the work isn't done. The indoors is calling you back. The fire needs mending, and there is a pile of mending of a different kind waiting for you by the hearth. You pick up your bucket of doom, snails and weeds, and head back toward the house. The warmth will be nice, but you know what awaits you there. The straining of eyes in the dim light. The day is winding down, but the darkness brings its own set of trials. You step back inside, the heavy oak door thudding shut behind you, sealing out the damp, gray garden and the creeping twilight. The air in the house is warmer, but it's also dimmer. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing coals. You'll need to feed it soon, but for now, the room is bathed in a soft, melancholic half-light. You drop your basket of garden findings in the pantry and wipe your muddy hands. You might think this is the moment you finally get to relax. Maybe put your feet up and scroll through the mental feed of the day's events. But no, the Tudor woman's hands are never idle. If you aren't cooking, cleaning, or weeding, you are sewing. You move to the window. This is prime real estate. In a world without light bulbs, the window is your workstation. You drag a three-legged stool, or a joint stool, if the master is fancy, into the patch of gray light filtering through the lattice. If the house is wealthy, you might have glass panes, small diamond shapes held together by lead strips. If not, it's oiled linen or horn, which emits a dull, yellowy glow that makes everything look slightly jaundiced. You sit down. Your back sighs in relief, but your eyes are about to start their shift. You reach for your hasweef, pronounced hus-if. This is your sewing kit, a roll of fabric containing the tools of your trade, needles, thread, scissors, or shears, and a thimble. You unroll it on your lap. It's time for the daily mending. In the modern world, if a sock gets a hole, you throw it away. If a shirt tears, it becomes a rag or a donation. In the 16th century, textiles are currency. They are the second most valuable thing a person owns, right after their house and land. A good wool coat costs more than a cow. A fine linen shirt is worth weeks of wages. To throw away clothing is not just wasteful. It is financial suicide. So you mend, you patch, you darn. You resurrect these garments from the dead over and over again until they are more stitched than original fabric. You pick up a pair of the master's hose. These are the wool stockings you wrestled onto his legs this morning. They have a hole in the heel, worn through by the friction of his leather shoes. You slide a darning egg into the stocking. It's a smooth, rounded piece of wood, or perhaps a large, polished mushroom shape that stretches the fabric taut so you can work on it. You thread your needle. This is the first hurdle. The light is fading. You hold the needle up to the window, squinting. The eye of a Tudor needle is not the precision-engineered laser-cut hole of today. It might be a bit rough. You lick the end of the wool thread, flatten it, and jab it at the hole. Miss. Jab again. Miss. You are playing a microscopic game of archery, where the target is invisible and your hands are still trembling from scrubbing pots. This is the Tudor eye exam, and everyone fails it eventually. Once threaded, you begin the weave. Darning is an art form. You aren't just sewing the hole shut. You are reweaving the fabric. You create a grid of vertical threads, the warp, and then weave the horizontal threads, the weft, through them, over and under, over and under. It is tedious, repetitive, and requires absolute focus. If you drop a stitch, the whole thing unravels. Historians still argue about the extent of home production versus the consumer revolution in this period. Did the average household really spin and weave all their own cloth, or were they already relying heavily on professional weavers and buying fabric from the market? While the romantic image is of every woman sitting by a spinning wheel, the reality for you, a servant in a busy townhouse, is that you are likely buying the cloth, but doing 100% of the construction and repair. You are the tailor, the seamstress, and the repair technician. As you work, the room gets quieter. The only sounds are the pop of the fire and the soft snick-snick of your needle pulling through the wool. It's almost meditative, or it would be if you weren't terrified of losing your needle. Needles are valuable. They are made of iron or steel, often imported from Germany or Spain. If you lose one in the rushes on the floor, you don't just shrug, you search. You get down on your hands and knees and sift through the herbs and dirt until you find it. Losing a needle is a docking of wages. And then there are the pins. You use them to hold patches in place. Pins are made of drawn wire with a separate wire coil wrapped around one end to form the head. They are vital. In fact, they are so vital that a woman's allowance for personal items is often called pin money. This term will survive for centuries, eventually coming to mean pocket change, but right now it is literal. You need money for pins because without pins, you fall apart. Here is a quirky, slightly horrifying tidbit for you. Because pins were handmade and the heads were just wrapped wire, they often popped off. Worse, women often held pins in their mouths while sewing because, let's face it, it's convenient. Medical texts from the era are full of horror stories about women accidentally swallowing pins or inhaling them and having them migrate through the body to emerge months later from an arm or a leg. So as you hold a pin between your lips to adjust a patch, you are literally flirting with a slow, metallic death. You finish the stocking and move on to a linen shirt. It has a tear near the collar. This requires a finer touch. You switch to a linen thread. Linen is stubborn. It doesn't stretch like wool. You have to use tiny whip stitches to close the gap. This shirt is near the end of its life. The linen cycle is a fascinating bit of historical ecology. A piece of fine linen starts as a master's ruff or best shirt. When it wears out, it is cut down to make a shirt for the children or a shift for you. When that wears out, it is cut into clouts, diapers, for the baby or sanitary rags. When those are too foul to wash, they are sold to the rag and bone man, who sells them to paper mills to be pulped into paper. That document the master signed today? It might be made of his grandfather's old underpants. The light is failing fast now. The window is turning into a square of deep blue and black. You are sewing by feel as much as by sight. Your eyes burn. This is why spectacles, glasses, are beginning to appear in portraits of the elderly, usually scholars or moneylenders. But you don't get glasses. You just get squint lines and a reputation for being clumsy as you age. You have one more task before you lose the light completely. You need to check the points. These are the laces with metal tips aigles that hold the men's breeches to their doublets. If a point breaks, the master's pants fall down. It's a structural failure you cannot allow. You check the cords, re-stitching a loose aiglet. It's fiddly work, requiring strong fingers. You prick your finger. Of course you do. A drop of bright red blood wells up. You instantly stick your finger in your mouth. Not because of the pain, but because you cannot stain the linen. Blood is iron and protein. It sets instantly and is a nightmare to remove. You suck the wound, tasting the metallic tongue, and check the fabric. Safe. You tie off the final thread and bite it to cut it. Scissors are for big cuts. Teeth are for thread. It's a bad habit that will eventually chip your front teeth, giving you that jagged, saw-toothed smile that is so popular among the working class. You roll up your husweef. The window is now dark. The day shift is officially over, but the evening shift has arrived. You can to sew in the dark candles are too expensive to waste on darning socks, unless it has an emergency. This signals a transition in the household routine. You stand up, your knees popping loudly. You stretch your back, hearing the vertebrae click into place. The silence of the sewing hour is broken by the sound of the master calling for light. The sun has abandoned you, and now you must create your own sun. You put the stool away and head for the kitchen to deal with the fat. It's time to make the light, and unlike the clean scent of the lavender garden, this next task smells like burning meat. The sun has fully abdicated its throne. The windows, which were your lifeline during the sewing hour, are now just black squares reflecting the room back at you. The house is plunging into the heavy, total darkness of the pre-industrial world. If this were a modern home, you'd flip a switch and flood the room with 800 lumens of warm white LED light. Here, fighting the dark is a tactical operation, and unfortunately, the budget for the war effort is non-existent. You head back to the kitchen, the warmth of the fire welcoming you like an old friend, even if that friend is smoky and demanding. It is time to prepare the lights. Now you might be imagining beeswax candles, those long, elegant tapers that smell of honey and burn with a steady, golden flame. Erase that image. Beeswax is the iPhone Pro Max of the 16th century. It is incredibly expensive, costing nearly 4 times the price of tallow. It is reserved for the church, the nobility, and special occasions like weddings or funerals. Your master, despite his pretensions with the silver salt cellar, is not burning beeswax on a Tuesday night. He might spring for tallow dips, candles made from animal fat with a wick of twisted hemp. But even tallow candles are a commodity you have to be careful with. For the kitchen, the scullery, and the servants' quarters, you are using the bottom of the barrel. You are using rushlights. You move to the corner where you keep the kitchen stuff. This is the polite term for the grease, fat, and scum you skinned off the boiling pots earlier in the day. Remember that mutton dinner? The fat that rendered out of it didn't go down the drain. You don't have a drain. It went into a grease pot. This congealed, grayish-white sludge is the fuel for your evening. You take a handful of dried Russia's Juncus effusus that were harvested from the marsh in late summer. Preparing them is an art in itself. You had to peel the outer skin, the rind, off the reed, leaving just the soft, white, spongy pith inside. And this is crucial. You had to leave one thin strip of rind, running the length of the rush to act as a spine. If you peeled it completely, the pith would just fall apart. So you have a pile of these flimsy, white, spinal cord-looking things waiting for you. You place an iron pan, often called a grisset, on the fire. You scoop the congealed mutton fat into it. As it melts, the smell hits you. It is not a pleasant smell. It smells like a fast food fryer that hasn't been changed since the administration of Henry VIII. It is the scent of old, cooked meat, slightly rancid, heavy and oily. It coats the back of your throat. This is the aroma of the evening for the 99% of the population. Once the fat is liquid and bubbling, slightly hot enough to burn you, but not hot enough to catch fire, hopefully, you take a bundle of the peeled rushes. You hold them by the ends and drag them through the hot grease. You submerge them, letting the thirsty pith drink up the liquid fat. You count to 10. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. You lift them out. The hot fat drips back into the pan with a sizzling sound. You lay the greasy reeds on a piece of bark or a jagged slate to cool. As they cool, the fat hardens, turning the rush into a stiff, greasy stick. You have just made a rushlight. It is essentially a wick without a candle. Now you have to use it. You can't put a rushlight in a candlestick. It's too thin and would just fall over. You use a nip or a rushlight holder. This is a simple iron tool that looks like a pair of pliers on a stand. One jaw is weighted, keeping the mouth closed. You pinch the greasy rush between the jaws, angling it at about 45 degrees. You light the top end with a splinter from the fire. It catches easily, thanks to the mutton fat. The flame is small, sputtering, and smoky. It gives off a light that can best be described as anemic. It's enough to see your hands, enough to keep you from tripping over the dog, but not enough to read fine print. Here is the kicker. A rushlight burns fast. A standard 2-foot rush might last 15 to 20 minutes. This means you are tethered to the light. You have to constantly tend it, pushing the rush up through the jaws of the holder as it burns down. If you forget, it burns down to the iron, sizzles, and goes out, plunging you back into darkness. You are the battery manager. Historians still argue about the quality of life this lighting provided. Some experimental archaeologists claim that a well-made rushlight is actually surprisingly bright, comparable to a small candle, and that the gloom of the past is exaggerated. Others argue that the smoke and the smell would have made indoor environments intolerable by modern standards. Standing there, smelling the rendering fat, watching the black smoke curl up toward the blackened beams of the ceiling, you're inclined to side with the intolerable crowd. But there is a hierarchy, even in the grease. If the master is feeling thrifty, he might be using dips made from pig fat. Pig fat is softer and smokier. Mutton fat is the gold standard for tallow. It's harder and whiter. Beef fat is okay, but it smells more. If you are really unlucky, you're burning a mix of whatever was in the trip pan, which might include fish oil. A fish oil rushlight is a sensory punishment that no one deserves. You make a bundle of these greasy sticks. You'll need one for the master's bedside, one for the hall, and one for the kitchen. You carry the rushlight holder into the hall, the faint pool of light moving with you. The shadows in the corners of the room stretch and jump, grotesque distortions caused by the flickering flame. It's easy to see why people in this era are so superstitious. When the light is this unstable, a coat on a hook looks exactly like a demon, and a cat moving in the shadows looks like a goblin. There is a quirky tidbit about tallow. It is edible. Not tasty, but edible. In times of famine, or on ships where supplies ran out, people would eat their candles and rushlights. It's pure animal fat, after all. A calorie is a calorie. As you handle the greasy reed, you try not to think about eating it, though your stomach is empty enough that the thought isn't as repulsive as it should be. You set the holder on the table. The master is finishing his conversation or his reading. The rushlight sputters, spitting a drop of hot grease onto the table. Pissing tallow, they call it. You quickly wipe it up before it stains the wood. The atmosphere in the house has changed. The hustle of the day is gone, replaced by a hunkered-down, fort-building vibe. The cold is pressing against the walls, but inside, within the small circle of this smelling, sputtering light, there is a semblance of civilization. You have pushed back the night, albeit with the rendered fat of a dead sheep. You check the length of the rush. It's halfway done. You nudge it up through the pliers. The blackened, curled ember of the burnt rush falls off. This is the snuff. You catch it in your hand or a tray to prevent it from burning the table. You are constantly managing the debris of the light. But the light signals the end of the workday, or at least the active part of it. The master will retire soon. The fire needs to be banked. But before everyone collapses, there is one last ritual. The stomach needs one final offering. The supper scraps are waiting, and the trestle table needs to be cleared one last time. You blow out the rushlight in the kitchen to save it, waste not, want not, and work by the glow of the embers. The smell of extinguished, tallow-acrid, lingering smoke joins the symphony of odors in the room. It is the scent of bedtime. The rushlights are sputtering, casting frantic, dancing shadows against the plaster walls. But the day isn't quite ready to die. The master's stomach, a clock more reliable than any sundial, has signaled the need for supper. Now, don't confuse supper with dinner. Dinner was the midday production, the theatrical performance of roast meats and hierarchy. Supper is the sequel lower budget, less fanfare, and featuring a lot of recycled footage. It is a lighter meal, usually cold, eaten as the day winds down. You move to the livery cupboard in the hall or kitchen. This isn't a cupboard for uniforms. Livery comes from the French livery, meaning dispensed or handed over. It's a ventilated food safe with pierced doors to let air in and keep mice out. You open it up. Inside sits the ghost of dinner, the cold shoulder of mutton, a few capon legs, and a wheel of hard cheese. You arrange these cold remnants on a platter. There is no steaming gravy this time, no spit roasting. This is charcuterie before it was trendy. You slice the cold meat. The fat has congealed into white, waxy ribbons. It looks less appetizing than it did at noon, but food is food. You add bread and perhaps some butter. You carry the tray into the parlor. The family is there, huddled near the fire. The energy is low. They eat quietly, slicing the cheese and tearing the bread. You pour the ale again, but even the drinking is more subdued. This is fuel for sleep, not for business. While they eat, you stand in the shadows, your legs throbbing. The pain in your feet has moved past ache and settled into a dull, rhythmic thrumming that matches your heartbeat. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, but it doesn't help. The duck-billed shoes feel like vices. Finally, the master pushes his trencher away. He is done. It is time to void the table for the last time. You step forward. You clear the cups, the platters, and the salt cellar. The salt cellar goes back into a locked cupboard. Salt is money. You don't leave it out for the mice or the dishonest. You fold the tablecloth. This time, you don't just put it away. You check it for stains that will need your attention in the next great wash. The family retires to their bedchambers, or perhaps to prayer. The stage is yours. You take the tray of leftovers back to the kitchen. The other servants, the scullion, the boy who turns the spit, perhaps a nursemaid, are gathering. It is the moment you have been waiting for, since you woke up in the dark. It is the servant's supper. You sit down. The simple act of bending your knees and placing your weight on a bench feels like a religious experience. A collective sigh goes around the table. You look at the food. You are eating the reversions. In plain English, you are eating the master's scraps. If he cut a slice of mutton and didn't finish it, that's yours. If he left a crust of manchet bread, that's yours. There is a hierarchy here, too. The upper servants, the steward, the lady's maid, get the best leftovers. You, the maid of all work, get what they leave. The scullion boy gets the bones and the crusts. You grab a piece of the cold mutton. It is tough, and the fat coats the roof of your mouth, but the protein hits your system like a drug. You tear into the bread, likely the coarser yeoman's bread, or maslin, now brown and dense. You dip it into the juices on the platter. Historians still argue about the nutritional status of Tudor servants. Were you malnourished and starving, or were you actually better fed than the poor peasants in the countryside? The optimistic theory suggests that because you lived in a wealthy merchant's house, you had access to meat and ale daily, giving you a caloric intake of 3,000 calories, more than enough to sustain your heavy labor. The pessimistic theory points out that those calories came mostly from alcohol and bread, leading to vitamin deficiencies, scurvy, and a general state of bloated malnutrition. As you chew the hard cheese, you suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle. You are full, but you are tired. Your gums bleed a little when you brush them. Scurvy is a low-level constant for everyone in winter, but you aren't starving. There is a sense of camaraderie at this table. You trade gossip in low voices. You talk about the master's temper, the mistress's new kirtle, which you will have to wash, and the scandal of the baker who was caught adding chalk to his flour. This is the below-stairs social network. It is the only time of day you are a person, not a tool, but you can't linger. The fire in the main hearth needs to be raked. You get up, your joints protesting the movement. You go to the massive fireplace. You take the shovel and push the unburnt logs to the side. You gather the glowing embers into a pile in the center. Now You cover the embers with ash. You are tucking the fire in for the night. This is the curfew again. You pile the gray dust high, suffocating the flames, but keeping the heat alive at the core. If you do this wrong, the fire goes out and you freeze tomorrow morning, or it flares up and burns the house down, and you die tonight. No pressure. You pour water on the kitchen floor, just a splash, to dampen any sparks that might have jumped out. Fire is the great terror of the wooden city. You check the doors. You check the bolts. You are the security system. The kitchen is cooling down. The smells of the day roast meat, lye, sweat, herbs are settling into the cold stone. The other servants are drifting off to their pallets. The scullion is already asleep, curled up by the warm hearth like a dog. But you have one last duty. The master and mistress do not sleep in cold beds. That would be uncivilized. They require thermal assistance. You look at the copper pan hanging by the chimney. It is the bed warmer. It is your final enemy of the night. You pick it up. It has a long wooden handle and a perforated copper lid. You need to fill it. You take the iron shovel and dig into the ash you just carefully banked, fishing out the hottest, reddest coals. You drop them into the copper pan. Hiss, crackle, the metal heats up instantly. You close the lid. The pan radiates a fierce, dangerous heat. You are holding a bucket of fire on a stick. You have to carry this up the narrow, winding wooden stairs to the master's solar, without tripping, without dropping it, and without setting your own skirts on fire. You leave the half-eaten cheese on the table. The mice will get their share tonight and turn toward the stairs. The heavy silence of the house is pressing in. The day is technically over, but the service continues until the master closes his eyes. You grip the handle of the warming pan, feeling the vibration of the rolling coals inside, and begin the climb. You ascend the stairs, the wooden treads creaking under your feet in the quiet house. You are carrying a distinct danger in your hands. The bed warmer, a perforated copper pan on a long handle, filled with live coals, is radiating heat like a miniature sun. The handle is warm in your grip, and a faint trail of smoke wafts from the decorative holes in the lid, smelling of wood smoke and hot metal. If you trip now, you don't just bruise a shin. You burn the house down. No pressure. You reach the door of the solar, or the master bedchamber. This is the inner sanctum. You nudge the door open with your shoulder, careful not to jostle the coals. The room is different from the rest of the house. It smells of beeswax. Yes, here's where the good candles are, dried lavender, and the heavy, dusty scent of expensive textiles. The bed dominates the room. It is a massive four-poster fortress of wood and fabric. In the 16th century, the bed is often the most expensive item a family owns. It is a status symbol, a place of birth, death, and everything in between. It is so valuable that it is often specifically named in wills. You've heard of Shakespeare leaving his wife, his second-best bed? That wasn't an insult. It was a practical piece of furniture. The best bed was usually reserved for guests. You approach this wooden behemoth. The curtains, heavy wool or velvet, are drawn back. You can see the mattress. It's not a memory foam slab. It's a tick, a sturdy fabric bag stuffed with goose feathers. Feathers are the ultimate luxury. They are soft, warm, and expensive. You downstairs will be sleeping on straw that pokes you in the ribs. Here, the master floats on a cloud of plucked poultry. You peel back the coverlet, a decorative top layer, the blankets, and the fine linen sheets. The sheets are cold. Dampness is the enemy of the Tudor sleeper. A cold, damp bed is believed to invite the ague, fever, or rheumatism. Your job is to drive the damp out. You lift the upper sheet with one hand and slide the copper pan in with the other. Whoosh. You glide the pan back and forth over the bottom sheet. You have to keep it moving. If you let it sit in one spot for more than a few seconds, the intense heat of the coals will scorch the linen. Scorch marks on the master's sheets are a deduction from your wages, or worse. You are essentially ironing the bed from the inside out. You can smell the linen heating up a clean, dry, toasted scent that is undeniably cozy. You sweep the pan down to the foot of the bed, warming the spot where their cold feet will rest. You sweep it up to the pillows. You are creating a thermal pocket, a preheated cocoon. While you work, you observe the engineering of the bed. The mattress sits on a grid of ropes woven across the bed frame. Over time, these ropes stretch and sag, creating a hammock effect that rolls both sleepers into the middle. To fix this, you use a bed key or a bed wrench to tighten the ropes. This is where the phrase "sleep tight" comes from, or so the popular myth goes. Historians still argue about the etymology of sleep tight. Linguists point out that tight meant soundly or well in this period, unrelated to the ropes. But looking at the mechanics of the bed frame, you can help but think that a tight rope system is definitely preferable to a sagging one. Regardless of the linguistic debate, you checked the ropes earlier. They are tight. You also check for the uninvited guests. Bedbugs, Cimex lectularius, are a democratic nuisance. They bite the rich and the poor alike. The heavy curtains and wooden crevices of a four-poster bed are a five-star hotel for bugs. You scan the seams. If you saw any earlier, you might have rubbed the wood with strong-smelling oils or sulfur. "Don't let the bedbugs bite" is not a cute rhyme here. It is a tactical command. The master and mistress enter the room. They are ready to retire. This involves another layer of service. You might help the mistress out of her sleeves, unpinning the items you pinned on 12 hours ago. You unlace her bodice. The stiff, structural cage of her clothing is removed, and she breathes a sigh of relief that echoes your own internal exhaustion. They approach the bed. You quickly withdraw the warming pan, swinging it out from between the sheets. You have to be careful not to spill a stray spark onto the rug or the floorboards. You close the sheets quickly to trap the heat. They climb in. The mattress rustles, the sound of feathers shifting. They sink into the warmth you created. They pull the heavy curtains shut around the bed. This creates a room within a room. The curtains draft-proof the sleeping area, trapping their body heat and the heat from the pan inside the box. It also gives them privacy, which is a rare commodity. In many households, a servant or a child might sleep on a trundle bed, a low bed on wheels that is rolled out from under the main bed at night. If that were you, you'd be sleeping at the foot of their bed, listening to them snore. Luckily, in this house, you have been banished to the kitchen. You back out of the room, carrying the cooling but still dangerous pan. You take the candle or rushlight with you, leaving them in the velvety darkness of the curtained bed. "Good night," you murmur, though they probably aren't listening. You descend the stairs again. The handle of the pan is cooling now. The house is silent. The floorboards settle with loud cracks that sound like pistol shots in the quiet. You navigate the dark hallway by memory, your feet knowing exactly which board squeaks and where the uneven flagstone is that tries to trip you. You return to the kitchen. You dump the dying coals back into the fireplace, covering them with the ash to ensure they are safe. You hang the copper pan on its hook. Its job is done. The master is warm. The mistress is warm. The house is locked. The fire is banked. The contrast strikes you. You have just spent 10 minutes ensuring the thermal comfort of two other human beings, handling expensive linens and soft feathers. Now you turn to face your own reality. There are no feathers waiting for you. There is no warming pan for your bed. You look at your corner. Your bed is a pallet. It is a sack of canvas stuffed with straw. If you are lucky, it is fresh straw. If you are unlucky, it is the same straw from last winter, broken down into dust. You have a coarse woolen blanket ahop that is scratchy and heavy. But right now, as you untie your apron and unpin your sleeves, that straw pallet looks more inviting than the finest bed of state in the king's palace. Gravity is pulling at you. Your eyelids feel like they have lead weights attached to them. You are about to surrender. The long, silent war of the day is over. You have survived the cold, the fire, the water, the dirt, and the master. You stand in the center of the kitchen, the warmth of the banked fire at your back, offering a final, ghostly embrace before you surrender to the chill of the floor. The house is finally, truly silent. The heavy oak beams above you, which have witnessed every frantic moment of your day, the scrubbing, the cooking, the scouring, seem to settle into a deep, groaning repose. The vibration of footsteps has ceased. The shouting has stopped. It is just you and the dying embers. You begin the process of unmaking yourself. This is the reverse engineering of the morning's architecture. You reach for the laces of your kirtle. Your fingers, stiff and swollen from the day's labor, fumble with the knots. You pull the lace free. The stiff bodice loosens. The sensation is immediate and overwhelming. It's like taking a deep breath after holding it for 16 hours. Your ribs expand. Your spine, which has been held in a rigid column of wool and canvas, slumps forward in gratitude. You step out of the heavy wool skirt, letting it pool around your ankles like a dark puddle. You don't have a wardrobe or a hanger. You fold the kirtle carefully. It is your livelihood, after all, and drape it over a bench, or place it in a chest if you're lucky enough to have one. You peel off your stockings, unknotting the garters that have dug deep red trenches into your calves. You rub the skin, restoring the circulation. The relief is so sharp, it borders on pain. You are back down to your shift, that same linen smock you put on before dawn. It is now damp with sweat, stained with soot, and smelling of the day's menu. But you don't change it. You don't have a drawer full of fresh pajamas. This is it. You smooth the linen down over your legs. It is your second skin, your barrier against the rough wool of the blanket. You move to your pallet. Let's look at this bed. It is a canvas sack filled with straw. It sits directly on the rushes of the floor. Over time, the straw inside breaks down, turning into chaff and dust. It's not fluffy. It's lumpy. It's less like a mattress and more like a bag of petrified mulch. But to your exhausted body, it looks like a cloud. You lie down. The straw crunches loudly under your weight. The floor is hard beneath it, the cold of the stone seeping up through the layers. You pull your coarse, scratchy woolen blanket up to your chin. You curl into a ball, trapping your body heat. This is the fetal position of survival. You tuck your cold feet into the hem of your shift. Now, as you lie there in the dark, waiting for sleep, you might expect to sleep through the night until dawn. But here is where we hit a major historical debate. Historians still argue whether the pre-industrial worlds slept in one solid block like we do, or if they practiced segmented sleep. The theory, popularized by historian Roger Eckertz, suggests that people slept in two phases. You'd sleep for about 4 hours, the first sleep, wake up around midnight for an hour or so to pray check the fire, maybe chat with your bedmate, or, if you were the master and mistress, conceive the next. Ere and then go back to sleep for the second sleep. So, are you going to wake up in 3 hours? Maybe. Or maybe, because you have walked 10 miles inside a single house and hauled your own body weight in water, you are going to coma sleep until the rooster screams. The segmented sleep might be for the leisure class, who are physically shattered by their day. For you, sleep is not a schedule. It is a collapse. You stare up into the darkness. The kitchen is never fully dark. The embers in the hearth cast a faint, demonic red glow that pulses like a slow heartbeat. The shadows stretch and morph. This brings us to the nightmare. In the Tudor mind, a nightmare isn't just a bad dream. It is a physical entity. It is the mare, a goblin or a hag that sits on your chest while you sleep, crushing the breath out of you. We know this today as sleep paralysis, a terrifying condition where your mind wakes up but your body is still paralyzed, and you hallucinate a weight on your chest. But for you, lying in the drafts, listening to the house settle, the threat of the mare is real. Here's a quirky tidbit. To ward off the mare, or simply to ensure a safe night, many people would hang a holed stone, a stone with a natural hole in it, over their bed. It's an ancient folk charm. If you don't have a magic rock, you might have scratched a cross into the hearthstone or whispered a specific prayer. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the bed that I lie on. You mutter it under your breath, just in case. You can't afford to be strangled by a goblin tonight. You have laundry to do tomorrow. The silence of the house amplifies the small sounds. You hear a mouse skittering across the floorboards, likely heading for the cheese rinds you left on the table. You don't move. A mouse is your roommate. As long as he stays off your face, you have a truce. You hear the wind rattling the shutters, trying to find a way in. You hear the deep, rhythmic breathing of the scullion sleeping on the other side of the hearth. Your body begins to shut down, muscle by muscle. The ache in your shoulders from the water buckets dulls into a heavy numbness. The sting of the lie on your hands throbs one last time and then fades into the background noise of your nervous system. Your brain starts to unravel the day. You see flashes of the market, the steam of the wash, the shine of the scoured brass. The smells of the day smoke, sweat, onions, lavender swirl together in your mind into a single gray sensory soup. You are drifting. The boundary between the room and your mind blurs. The cold floor feels less cold. The scratchy wool feels softer. You are a machine that has finally been switched off. The engine is cooling. The fire is banked. The door is bolted. The world has shrunk down to the space inside your skull. You take one last deep breath, inhaling the scent of the wood ash. You have done it. You have survived the quiet routine. You kept the fire lit. You kept the master fed. You kept the linen white. You held the chaos of the 16th century at bay for one more rotation of the earth. And tomorrow, before the sun even considers rising, you will do it all again. But that is a problem for the future. Right now, there is only the heavy, sweet, irresistible gravity of sleep. The darkness is soft now, no longer a heavy weight, but a gentle blanket draped over the world. The red eye of the fire blinks slowly in the grate, a warm, pulsing reminder that the heart of the house is still beating, low and steady. The shadows have stopped their dancing and settled into the corners, wrapping themselves around the furniture like sleeping cats. You are safe here. The thick stone walls that held the cold at bay all day now stand as a fortress against the night. The wind outside may howl and scratch at the shutters, but it cannot reach you. The mud of the streets, the noise of the market, the demands of the master, they are all locked away, existing only in a distant world that has no power over you in this moment. Feel the heaviness in your limbs. It is not pain anymore. It is a grounding anchor. You are sinking into the earth, held by the floor, supported by the quiet. The rhythm of your breathing slows down, matching the slow draft of the chimney. In and out. The scent of the dried herbs in the rushes. The faint ghost of meadowsweet and lavender rises up to meet you, a final sweet note to end the symphony of the day. Let the images of the day fade. The bright flash of the copper pan, the gray swirl of the dishwater, the green of the garden, let them all dissolve into a soft, monochromatic mist. There is nothing you need to do. There is nothing you need to fix. The world will wait for you. For now, you are just a breathing stillness in the dark. Sleep comes not as a stranger, but as a familiar friend, taking your hand and leading you gently down into the velvet silence. You drift. You float. You are at peace.